Well, here we are, Michael, live. We'll let some of the audience come in as we begin more talk. And we have a great schedule today with some great guests that I am very excited about as we enter 2024. So happy New Year. It is 2 p.m. Eastern here on a Thursday on the East Coast.
And it is 11 a.m. on the West Coast in what is now sunny San Diego. Happy New Year to you, Michael.
Happy New Year to you as well. Excited for today's show and really excited for us to continue where we left off last year, which is to show consistency and be a raw voice in the industry with no, as you said, the king that we serve for, and you said it so well, as the jesters of the court, the king that we serve is the mortgage industry itself. Our target audience is lenders and loan officers and ultimately consumers and real estate agents. Why not, in the world of transparency, hear direct from the source, direct from the industry as you go through dealing with your homes, right? And your own P&L.
Yes.
We'll talk about it today. Why not know what the experts should know so that you can help guide that conversation? Because that's where the whole world's going.
A lot of consumers actually don't really understand the mortgage industry. I mean, when we talk about we can talk about the mortgage industry till we're blue in the face because we're in it. But most consumers don't actually understand the mortgage process, the qualifying process. Most people don't even know how to understand their own home budget. If I say create a pro forma, they'll just say what? So our platform allows us not only a little bit of education to the consumer, but allows them to also get insight on what actually goes on in the big picture and the small picture as well. And I'm real happy that we have just an amazing group of professionals that not only listen but also participate at the same time. This year's looking to gear up to be pretty exciting, not only in interest rates, but also in inventory. I was just studying that a little bit earlier today, Michael. So how do we want to lead it off this morning?
Yeah, and for those in the audience, we'll just break down how the show is going to go today. We record this live on LinkedIn Audio every Thursday, and then it gets dropped with a intro on our YouTube, Spotify, all of those stations on Sunday. So welcome to in front of a live studio audience. You get to hear us, Michael and I, give opinions of the mortgage industry, where it's going, and some insight right up till about 10 past. And then Sue Buswell will be coming on, who we are just the biggest fans of. And I mean that because she holds the keys, I think, to where loan officers' mindset needs to be moving forward. I think it's been a long journey of why credit is important, but this younger generation, this pent up 30 million people to buy homes, they are better at managing. There's too many tools out there. They know how to access them, but they really don't know the guidance around that. So she's going to get into that. And then I'm very excited. Matt Slonaker, I hope I pronounced that correctly, but I just was introduced to him through Clayton Collins, actually, at Housing Wire, a premier sales trainer, sales coach, also expert at the leadership level. But I wanted him to take in like a sponge some of the talking points Sue's going to talk about and help put it into what loan officers' mindset should be and how they should sell. That'll happen around 2:30. So about half into this show, you'll hear some coaching tips. And if you are somebody looking for a home or you own a home, this show is for you. We're going to be talking to the experts, but in this world, you can reach out to them, coach them on how to help you and go find those resources. So let's begin, Mike. And by the way, we have a special guest maybe coming 45 minutes into the show, but on a lot of calls, big leader, big following. So if he can't make it, we're going to rely on this audience. And we have a nice audience here to maybe come up and ask a quick question and pull the end of the show if he can't make it. And if he can, It's going to be a great grand finale.
I think so. It would be super excited if we can get him on. So, Michael, go ahead. And how do you want us to lead into the next portion here?
First, this is an area where if we're going to be talking sales, I don't think people have this in their CRMs or in their database. Are they marking loans as DINKS? Let's if you don't know what a DINK is, Michael, why don't you tell them what it is? Because you mentioned it before it became popular on social media.
I don't know if I mentioned it before it came social. It was well known before even I spoke about it. Dink is a dual income, no kids. Logan Motoshami put it on his podcast as DICE, dual income college educated. And I think that it's important as we're going to eventually we're going to be led into talking with Sue about credit, about how important it is for this next generation of millennials. They've been able to, if you look at how much money has been able to be saved up in this particular demographic, they've done an incredibly amazing job of not only working but also saving money. And over the last year, as interest rates have gone up, a lot of these millennials have been not necessarily making the opportunity to buy because they're waiting for interest rates to come down, but also looking at the inventory that we have right now and looking at going, you know what? Not only are interest rates higher, we just don't have the amount of inventory that's going on. In California, where I'm at right now, if I go back into May of 2020, we had 58,000 active housing units for sale in May of 2020. I'm on the FRED economic data website, which is the St. Louis Federal Reserve. And then if you go down to November of this past year, which is where the graph goes to, we're only at 46,000. So down effectively almost 20% in inventory units for sale in a higher interest rate environment didn't bode very well for the millennials right now. So if we look at that, and now we're entering into a potential lower interest rate environment over the course of the year, as the Federal Reserve has already projected that they're not going to do any more hikes. There have been some questions on when, and how many times they're going to be lowering rates, but there are some political factors. It looks like not only with an election, but also with the balanced budget that we have in our government is going to have some dictation on how much demand is going to be in the mortgage market. And for the consumers that don't know, the Federal Reserve doesn't control interest rates, mortgage-backed securities, or mortgage.
On that pause,
So
it might be me, but I'll give you a chance to regroup real quick. Here is what blew up in December.
So that's the trend that we're seeing in these videos. The dink couples come together and say, we're dinks because we have all this disposable income that we get to comments. We're dinks. We're going to get asked daily when we plan on having kids.
We're dinks. Of course we're going to go out to eat every night after work.
We're dinks. We don't have to ask our family for financial help or to watch our kid when we want to go out.
We're dinks. We're going to go to Costco and buy all the snacks in bulk that we want.
We're dinks. We have disposable income to spend on whatever we would like and don't have to spend on a kid.
We're dinks. I'm going to go to every football game and play 18 holes whenever I want.
We're dinks. We're going to get asked to every single family event what we're doing with our life.
So does that mean they rent more, or do they buy more? This is becoming a thing, and it, I believe, has a lot to do with the freedom of what social media has determined as like the perfect life, right? The filtered life, they call it. And I continue to ask this, is the filtered life involve home ownership, or does the filtered life involve renting? I would think it is renting, and then midlife crisis. We used to have what was called quarter life crises, right? Some people know what that is. Now you got a midlife crisis, probably hits you in the late 30s, is what we're hearing now. And then maybe you go find the home. But at that point, maybe you're pot committed being a dink or a dice. With that said, as a loan officer, as a realtor, or as a consumer, it didn't sound like any of their behaviors were thinking long-term or generational wealth there in that video, did it?
No, it didn't sound like it in that video. I would ask to disagree with that. I mean, in my sphere of influence that I hang around, kids, I'm going to call them kids because they're under 40, and I'm over that. But I think it's incredible to me. I don't think I've ever seen, even in my loan officer career in residential real estate, I don't think I'd ever seen so many potential homeowners between the ages of 28 to 40 with six-figure bank accounts willing to. And remember, this is San Diego County, where we have a lot of tech people that are here, not only in biotech but also in cellular tech. But I haven't seen so many people between the ages of 28 to 40 with six-figure bank accounts that can put 20% down for their first home. These are renters, and they are, and they either live alone or they have a roommate situation, which they're very comfortable with. And this is the the amount of people, at least I think in larger income cities. We're talking about Seattle, San Diego, and Austin area where you have technology and you have the amount of income and the amount of savings that are available to buy. They just haven't purchased yet. We have an inventory crisis, higher interest rates, all kinds of reasons on the media that's negative news that's causing them to wait. And these are the kids. Remember, kids under the age of 40, I say, that are still on the sidelines, living their best life. And then as soon as they're like, oh, guess what? We're going to have kids. Oh, well, I mean, because life happens, not because you plan sometimes, because it happens. And those are the homeowners that are going to be coming, and they're still going to be coming over the next 2 to 3 years, if not 4 to 5 years. And that's exciting because we still get an opportunity to educate them, teach them, and get them into a home. And the video can say one thing, but they're going to buy a house. Maybe not now, but they will.
This is where they want content, and how you deliver it, maybe Matt gets into later in the show, but this is where they think they know, but they don't know. Meaning they have an app that says your credit score is now 760. Make sure that you keep your balances okay. They're not loan officers, or they haven't been trained on what that actually means, or it hasn't been ingrained into them. And I think that's where loan officers can have an opportunity, real estate agents. I think consumers want to know these golden nuggets if you don't waste their time and you get right to it, and they'll pick up a call. It's not even a cold call at that point. It's a warm call. You're trying to help versus clean gutters, right? Like that's just there's not enough inventory, and people aren't cleaning their own gutters if they have $100,000 in the bank. So Sue, based on what you heard so far, and we don't have to dive too much into Dink and Dice, just in general, how can loan officers take the news of 2023, 2022 in the credit world and make it part of their conversations in 2024?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm great. And I'm happy to be here. Glad to reconnect with you guys here in 2024, and Happy New Year to our audience. And it's nice to see we have so many people listening. So I wanted to start off saying I'm a Gen X dink, but I've been a homeowner and a renter, kind of rent back and forth a few times. But the position that I'm in today, being able to be partially retired before it's retirement age, is because of wealth building through home ownership. I think what loan officers have to be prepared to talk about with their potential home buyers today is, what is their vision of wealth building? Because I think we have to remember that the average age of marrying today is 30 or higher, much different than it was in my generation, much different than it was for those millennials. We also have to remember that not everyone values the grounding, if you will, of a home and all the costs that go with it. One of my posts this morning was about a $5,000 cost to replace my heater in my home yesterday. So, home ownership is a great way to build wealth. My husband and I were flipping homes before it was cool, but we were just getting tired of the home. No kids, dual income, no kids. You don't necessarily stay in it for 5 to 10 years. So, as a loan officer, it's really your job to prepare your home buyer not just to close, but to be a successful homeowner. And you really need to find out, what is it that they're looking for? What's their objective? I think Matt can probably speak to that better than I can. But we also are seeing a lot of these dinks carrying a lot of debt because they want to live a bit of that nomadic lifestyle. They don't mind if their credit cards balance to limit are high. And I think most of the people on this call, especially our real estate mortgage professionals, can attest to the fact that potential home buyers this year with good credit scores and down payment, they were actually denied. I think we had like 42% fallout. Somebody will have to double check me on that, because of debt to income. And that's where your scores can start to be affected. So we got a lot of different avenues we can go down, Mike and Mike. You guys just direct me, and we'll do some traffic control.
So it's interesting because most loan officers or mortgage originators are talking about asset creation and asset preservation and building wealth. That seems, those are popular topics of conversation. Not understanding or totally realizing that debt, that taking on a mortgage is going to be one of their largest debts in their entire life if student loans isn't already a part of that, right? And as we talk about asset preservation and asset growth, I don't think a lot of millennials or even home buyers, but they could be Gen X home buyers too, as a first time buyer as well. A lot of people don't really understand what it means to plan their debt out at the same time. Over the course of the last year, inflation may have caused a little bit more excess spending because of necessity. But outside of that, as an outlier, uh, you know, do how much conversation do you hear either from originators or mortgage bankers or other industries in debt planning, not just in the mortgages, but like, hey, you know what? Have you budgeted to spend X amount on your credit cards because you want to accumulate X amount of hotel and airline points, which may be a conversation, I guess. But I could see how digital nomads actually use that as a part of the way they live. So do you speak to very many people when it comes to debt planning? I'm going to accumulate X amount of debt because this is how I'm going to live, whether it's student loans, whether it's automobile loans, or even consumer credit.
Yeah, I think debt is, my one of my philosophies on debt is debt to live is not a strategy. So debt to live is not a lifestyle, it's not a strategy, it's not sustainable. There are certain things that you typically go in debt for, and home ownership is a debt that, in my opinion, is worth having. There's strategies around paying that down quicker so that you're building that wealth piece of it. We're carrying this year in 2023 going to 2024 the largest debt load that we've seen, and when we talk about debt to the ability to someone to buy, I was looking at some statistics this morning, and our millennials, who are the people that are ready to buy, over 50% of them don't have either an emergency savings or savings that would cover 3 months of expenses. So that means we're going to have this huge generation, this pent-up demand of purchase, who perhaps aren't financially ready to do that. So I think we have to talk as a loan officer, as a loan advisor, and I think this is really where there's a movement in the industry to stop being transactional and to really start being a loan advisor and talking to your customers, talking to your prospective home buyers about where are you at currently? Are you making a budget, right? Have you already gone and looked at homes? Because I can tell you as a prior homeowner, first-time home buyer, I was falling in love with homes that I was approved for based on my gross. When I went home and did my budget, I was like, "Wait a minute, I live on my net. I need to have my loan officer, like pull this amount that I'm approved for down to what's reasonable for my budget, even that we were dinks, right?" I think that's where these loan officers are going to create this pipeline of closed loans, referral business, and repeat transactions. Because if you get them into the home successfully by helping them understand their credit, their budget, what they can afford, what it's going to be, costing them to own a home, preparing them to be successful homeowners, right? Then when it's time. You know that you're watching their interest rates. You've got that saved somewhere. You know when it's time to do a cash out refi. We also have the largest amount of equity out there that's really been untapped. So there's a lot of opportunities for loan officers to change the narrative, but I don't think you can have one narrative. And again, I think Matt's the expert on this more than I am.
Do you think that's also part of the responsibility of the realtor? It seems to me that the realtor will get involved in, and they want control over their buyer, and now with even more so now with NAR going through their own business issues that they have as well with contracts and listings and so on and so forth. So do you think it could also be partially the realtor responsibility to get the education, if not through the internet, then also through the originator or the mortgage bankers?
I think it's a partnership for sure because a lot of home buyers start with their real estate agent, Michael. So that's an excellent point. But real estate agents don't have a permissible purpose to pull a credit report. So they can't give someone a pre-approval. They're going on, the hope strategy. I hope that what my customer is telling me about their debt and their credit is accurate. There's another alternative for that. I recently found myfico.com under their advanced setting has the ability to not only provide you with your FICO 8 score, but it also will provide you with your 2, 4, and 5. So the mortgage scores are now available for consumers on myfico.com. And I think that's a huge benefit as real estate agents can be providing that to their customer. Do you know where you're at? Oh, yeah, I have my Credit Karma score. No, let's go over here and let's get your mortgage scores where they're at today. And let's make sure that we start working from the platform that we'll be using for this transaction. And from there, they can really start speaking accurately to the customer about what they need to do, where they need to be, what they qualify for, and obviously pull in a real estate professional to do that.
Let me dive into that real quick because,
Sure.
you know, our target audience is loan officers or real estate agents. But let's dive deeper into our audience. It's the consumer, and ultimately, if no one's reaching out and giving this education, and this just became available, maybe the parents do, right? So you're a baby boomer parent and you have somebody in their 30s, maybe they're living in your home and you want to start coaching them to get out because they don't share the same TV. Would it be preferences as you do? So let's get this out. So let's break this down. You can go online because I didn't know this before, and so now I want to know my mortgage credit score. I want to start with that score so that I can set goals. They would go to myfico.com.
Okay. Yeah, so they go out to myfico.com. They choose the advanced option. And from the advanced option, it's a $29.95 a month if you choose to stay a subscriber. I went through this process back in November and I pulled my scores. I canceled the subscription because I didn't need it. But I was curious and I wanted to make sure that I could provide this to my audience. So within this advanced version, the first score that you get and the score that's monitored is the FICO 8 score. Coincidentally, FICO 8 is also used for most of our HELOC lending, so we can stick a pin in that and come back to it later. But then you'll notice that you have score versions by loan type. So you have mortgages, auto loans, credit cards, and then other versions. So if you choose mortgages, you go in and you see that you have FICO score 5, 4, and 2 available. So I have a copy of my FICO 8 scores. I have a copy of my FICO 5, 4, and 2 scores. And I have a copy of my FICO score 10T, which is pending implementation in the mortgage space for conventional loans. So it was interesting to me, and I'm happy to show this, Michael, if we go back and do the filming part of it. But, you know, the FICO 8 scores were within 3 points of 830 on average across all 3 bureaus. The 5, 4, and 2 had a larger variance, not tremendous, but could be up to 20 points. And I'd say the lowest was 798, the highest was 818. And then on the FICO 10T, which is going to bring some interesting things into our mortgage space for how scores are calculated, they were within 4 points of each other at the high band of 848 and the low of 844. So I'm one of those older borrowers and I get the benefit of that history. So that's where those scores come from. But it's a tremendous tool for real estate agents and loan officers. If you have someone who's on the fence or saying, no, don't pull my credit yet, I use monitoring, suggest this MyFICO advanced version because they can share with you these scores. FICO 8 is going to be refreshed consistently. The mortgage scores are refreshed monthly.
Interesting. Now, do you know if those are going to be reflective as a hard pull or a soft pull? Hard pull meaning that it actually reports, soft pull meaning that it doesn't show up as an actual pull and it just, so do you know which one it is?
Yeah, it's absolutely a soft pull because it's consumer initiated. It's not initiated by a lender. So a huge benefit.
Wow. That's an incredible value considering how much financial advisors charge to manage assets. And all the fees that are involved with either buying a vehicle or buying a home, paying even if you take $29.95 over 12 months to do some debt planning for the mortgage debt itself, not only figuring out what your credit score is and where you need to be headed toward, and also figuring out what the mortgage companies are going to be looking at for debt to income ratio purposes. A $360 investment over 12 months when you're planning to buy a home doesn't seem that high. It just seems, I mean, I know that you did it and canceled, as a test, but I just think like that's a great investment for someone that wants to buy a home. If they're going to be in, especially in California, where in my area the median price is just over $1 million. So if you're going to buy $1 million property, or even if you're going to buy a $250,000 property, a $360 investment to go plan to buy the largest debt or investment in your potential life, it seems like a small investment into learning about credit as well as assets.
Absolutely, Michael. And I think the thing that's really neat about it is you don't just get those scores and the mortgage scores, which are so important, but you also get your credit report. So if there was something, like my one score was 798 or something, and the others were 830, and I'm like, what's going on with this particular file, which was Experian? And while it's a score that for mortgage approval, we wouldn't really be, no one would be worried about it. But of course, any consumer is going to go, wait a minute, how come I'm, 30 points off here on one versus the other? You can look at those individual reports. It's not as difficult to read as the merged credit report typically delivered to a mortgage lender. So it's a huge consumer benefit. And I think for our industry, as we're facing some of the price increases that we're facing going into 2024 for credit reports, it's another tool in a loan advisor's tool belt to make sure that they're helping set up every potential home buyer as a successful opportunity for them to get into that home.
And this is a broad stroke, but so consumer pulls their own credit, right? And let's assume you can go either route. They're a homeowner now, or they want to buy a home. How would you, with a broad stroke, bucket these scores? So if I pull a 678 versus 730 versus a 790, do you think, could you pick two maybe and say what behaviors should be different once this happens? Like, is that where I think
Like a
our
what if.
audience, if you're a consumer, like loan officers can really help fix your credit, and they can do it because of resources like Sue and Matt will probably get into this. But if you're listening, like loan officers will be there to help you because it's in everybody's best interest, and they do so much studying on it. They do want to tell somebody, and it's not always an opportunity to do so. So with that said, I just always like to get granular. So if somebody's listening and they pull a 678 versus a 710 versus a 610, are there two distinct scores you would say, or areas where they should be reacting differently or right away?
I think I want to kind of preface that rather than trying to drill into two pieces, Michael, because that's a great question, but it leads to some unknown facts about our credit reporting system. The first one is your creditors are not required to report. And because they're not required to report, they may not report to all three bureaus. That's one piece of information. So that's, I would say, the top one is there's likely a differing across the bureau information for the consumer, either missing data or data that's lagging behind the other two scores. So let's get into the lagging part of it for number two. And that comes with how the repositories receive and then apply the credit data from the creditors. Most often, the creditors are reporting their information to the repositories every single month. It's an electronic file. The repositories don't add it the day they receive it, and they don't all add it to the file at the same time. So you made a great comment, Michael, that loan officers can quite often assist consumers with optimizing their credit score. And they do that by utilizing a number of tools. And I think one of the most often used tool is Credit Expert, but also a consumer who pulls their own credit report can see the date the information was last reported. And that one piece of credit information, the date that the information was reported to the credit bureau, in concert with the date that the credit report was pulled, is where it starts to calculate your scores. The most recently reported information is always going to count the most in your score. So that gets a little deep. So you gotta kind of pull me back sometimes, Michael. You know, I like to go all the way down into the weeds of it.
And that's okay. I mean, we could. I know you've had conversations about this for hours on end, and as much as I would love to listen to this, I think that we need to land this plane.
We're halfway through the show, right? And we now are going to take what we've learned over the first half and apply it to sales, as we like to do. Again, we tape live in front of a studio audience we have here, and it's radio format. So if somebody wants to just raise your hand, you click the top right, and you can ask a question just like a radio. We'll put you right back down, almost like you called in. And on the podcast, it'll flow very well. The podcast comes out on Sundays on YouTube with some fun videos. If you could please subscribe and like, now that we have a station, I know why people ask. It definitely makes a difference in being able to get more sponsorship, get better content out there. It is great. We appreciate the participation. Somebody kind of messaged in, DINK was a huge term in the 90s, especially used with gay buyers where they had high double income and no kids. So wanted to point out that us boomers coined that term. So thank you for that comment. Definitely, like everything, it seems it is getting recycled in society, but with short-term attention spans, you know, things are going viral, taking things from the 90s, 80s, and putting
Sure.
them back out there.
By the way, alternative lifestyles can also adopt as well. So they're going to have kids and they're going to want to buy a house, and they're going to, and I think they're going to actually, that demographic is also going to be coming into to purchase as well. But anyway, leading on.
Yeah, already have, right? I mean, it's full booming, I would say. On the sponsorship side, you know, adopt the brand. We use platforms like this, and we have some new podcasts coming out where we're trying to help lenders and loan officers see what's available to expand their business in 2024, 2025. We also look for certain partners and vendors in the mortgage industry that mainstream, for whatever reason, doesn't know about and introduce. So we're looking for people that are working for one IMB or one broker or one bank, and then taking that and reintroducing it to others. And that's been a proven formula. So adopt the brand. Very excited for 2024. We also do some work with family offices and providing new products for different loan originators, realtors, and even consumers. You know, please reach out and we can work with you there. With that said, huge fan of Matt. Like I said, Clayton Collins from Housing Wire actually introduced us, and that's a heck of a referral, right? And want to just introduce yourself, Matt. And I've been following you since we were connected. I think sales is so important, and especially with COVID, I think we got away from we were taking a lot of orders and got into a remote world, and now getting outside that comfort zone is going to be difficult, and I really want to dive into it with you. So welcome on the show here.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. And Sue said a lot that resonated with me as it applies to the sales realm. So I think real quick intro, 3 decades in the industry. I like to summarize it by a third in the business ops, namely default operations. I was managing the real estate owned portfolio for Bear Stearns during the last financial crisis. So over 14,000 single family foreclosed homes, had the responsibility of liquidating that in a timely fashion and getting the highest recoveries with the team. And then I did door knocking. I had a door knocking firm as part of a scratch and dent portfolio at Bear. Went out Southern California, knocked on over a dozen homes myself on Saturday evening, sat down with them at their kitchen table and helped position a solution in their time of need. So did ops, did IT, MIS, running quantitative talent. And then the last third of my career, I've been running sales and marketing teams and organizations. And so I think bringing it back to our topic here, Sue said a couple of things that resonated with me, and I'll bring it from a sales mentality. I think first and foremost, as we start this year, even if you are a top producer, I would highly recommend you think about your ideal client profile. So really think about that, because we've talked about kind of this generation, the younger generation, maybe not being as knowledgeable, but I'm biased here, and you can see in my tag on LinkedIn, I start with my military service. I'm a vet, and so I give my time back to American Corporate Partners (ACP), where I help mentor military transitioning out of the military. And so, what I would say is, the vets are 10% of the purchase market right now, and that's a very high number. It's 18 million purchases in vets. Well, there's 18 million vets, but it's 10% of our purchase market in 2023, with an average loan balance of 280,000. The average credit score there was 720. So I don't think that kind of surprised me, because I think some of us are, um, those in the financial think that maybe it's a lower FICO situation. But I would challenge some of these loan officers and the real estate agents teaming up. And if you're in California, Texas, and Florida, and the reason I bring those three states is that's where the heaviest veteran population, both active duty as well as vet retired, reside. Team up and look at the veteran, because a lot of what you guys were talking about was not just the mortgage application process and the credit. It was really financial wealth building. And I think this is a segment that, again, needs to be educated. They need that help, and they're thirsting for it. So if you can team up, that would be beneficial. So said a lot right there. I'll pause and let you guys ask some questions on that topic.
Well, first, let's, if you're in the audience, use the smile reaction. Let's thank you for your service, Matt. That's very important. And we, wouldn't be the land of the free without the home of the brave. So thank you there. And Michael, do you have any questions on what Matt just said? And I know.
Well, yeah. Also, we appreciate all our veterans nationwide fighting for the freedoms for our nation. Thank you for that, Matt. And we appreciate that. It was the first part. I really resonated, because a lot of, especially because the interest rates went up so fast and inventory was so low, it was hard for a lot of salespeople to actually go down to the ideal client profile. It was more of you got a hot breath and you do qualify with money in the bank and you got this. I'm used to funding 8 deals, 6 deals, and I've only got 2 deals in the pipe. Well, let's just go for it. And so right now, Matt, I resonated so much with that, because I think that if the average mortgage originator or salesperson would just get granular with who is their ideal client, it would be easier for them to actually pursue the right type of referral source and the right demographic to network with. For example, if someone wanted to be work only with veterans because they're either retired or voluntarily left or involuntarily left the military, I guess, then they could focus on that. And the fact that the average loan size was $250,000, I thought that it would have been much higher. But if that is the average VA loan size, then even an active military, if it's a dual income, can still afford to go purchase a home today. So that's super exciting. And I think that what the question I have for you, Matt, is how does someone get granular? How do they create their ideal client profile? Because I've seen a lot of people do it, but the implementation portion of it actually seems to be the biggest challenge. How does a salesperson create it and then implement that?
Great question. And I would also, before I answer that, Michael, just kind of, I think, piggyback again. Sue touched on this, I think, earlier too, is, and let's bring it to your question, the ICP. I think I highly recommend that you align to the client profile that you're going to focus on. So in my case, for example, been a C-level exec, right? I've got my own company. I've been doing that for the last 4 years, or at least since 2020. So my client profile, as far as the role that I typically am selling into, it's enterprise C-level executives. And the reason I do that is, again, I can relate to them, right? I understand the challenges of running a P&L, hiring staff, blah, blah, blah. So you see where I'm going with this. So as you think about your ICP, so let's answer your question. So you think about your ICP, I think first and foremost, think about yourself, your experiences, get a piece of paper and just jot down things that you excel at, skills, passions, hobbies, interests. Just write that stuff down. And then you're going to leverage that as you start to create your ICP, your ideal client profile. so that you have that credibility. So again, it'd be like me. If I'm talking to a younger someone like my daughter, I'm probably not going to have as much credibility as compared to talking to vets, because I've been a vet. I've transitioned out. I know what they're going through. So you see where I'm going with this, right? I think that's the first piece of creating your ICP. And maybe that's why they don't get executed against, because there's not that self-reflection that starts. So then start looking at the market data. Sue brought up some data. I brought up some data on the veteran. So, have some data to base your decision on. Understand what the total addressable market is. So based off your pricing per unit, per widget, whatever that may be, with the glorious internet that we all have at our fingertips, right? Do the research, find Housing Wire, American Banker. In our industry, right? You've got Statista out there that has great data, number of resources to use to pull the data. And then from there, start breaking it down. So like, what's the role? What's the age group? What's the geography? So we know real estate, and then loan officers, we know that real estate's always local, right? So to try to create, while your senior leaders at the top may have their generic kind of macro level strategies, it really does take that individual loan officer to know what's happening in that local real estate market. And the same with the loan officer. So do you have vets? I said 10%, but maybe your area has 30% vets. Well, hey, that promotes a little bit more targeting vets, right, in the VA loan products, if you have that percentage of vets. So I think you got to leverage data to create that ICP. And then I think as you start to do that, then start thinking about your positioning. So again, this is where that exercise of what's your skills, your experience, your hobbies, you're going to start mapping how you want that customer experience. And that's the whole thing. Sue said this too. It's get out of the transaction. Now, I really relate B to C. So if I'm a loan officer, right, you're business to consumer. Somebody like Slonaker here is selling to CEOs. I'm business to business. The correlation in today's marketplace is that both segments don't want to be sold to. They got to like you, trust you, and see some value, right? So they've got to have a pain. So you've got to really become, Sue said this a number of times, you got to become an advisor, find the pains and help them through that pain set. And that's a journey. And it also requires differentiation too. And that's going to help you differentiate yourself versus some of your colleagues out there that are still pursuing this as a transaction market.
Matt, something that resonated with me in my background, and you just said it with advisor there, and we as loan officers always wanted to call ourselves financial advisors, yet the closest thing is the annual review. We're not really doing much financial advising. Maybe we're scared to call or don't see a reason to, yet everybody's a financial advisor. Then when you hear Sue talk, is there an evolution that when you're reaching out to these ideal customer profiles, you don't have to come in as a financial advisor. You should come in as somebody that's liked. And how would you talk to your existing pipeline, your past close pipeline, as somebody with a real Wall Street background? Would you say get off that financial advisor and be something different?
I think first and foremost, you got to address the pain. So today it's about finding the gap of current state versus future state, right? And you've got to paint that story. If you want to be here, if that's your future, then here's how we can help. And I think this whole thing of you being an advisor, I think it's also you being a networker. You're, as an individual, I listened to the beginning part of this call with the details of the credit pools and the FICO scores and so forth. They expect one loan officer per se to understand all that detail, plus the loan programs and the product guides and intercompany policies. Like, it's too much. And then to do the market research on top of it, not going to happen. So I think what I would recommend and what I do, like with my own practice, is I have subject matter experts that I rely on. And the great way to bring that so that they can see that you're like I use the term rainmaker. that you not only have knowledge of the pains and the problems, but you have this network that's going to help them achieve that journey. It's such a big task, so it's bigger than one person. So this is a great way to do that and showcase that is, do virtual. I do virtual wine tastings. I've done like 20 of them since I started my practice, and I bring a number of institutional clients at the C-suite level on those. But then I pair up and I have technical experts, I have business experts, I have lending, I have loan servicing, I have capital markets, and that's where the ideals and the learning and the key insights really get shared, because you're bringing more than just say Matt Slonaker to a wine tasting and talking about XYZ pain. So see where I'm going with this. So my first recommendation, besides setting your ICP, is really think about the buying journey, right? If you're going to focus in the purchase segment, think about the buying journey and think about the network of advisors and partners that you're going to need, and then that's where you guys start to help each other too, right?
That's interesting, Matt. I mean, because I'm in San Diego, so we have Miramar, we've got Pendleton, we got 27th Street Naval. We got multiple military installations in the county here that we can pull from that are active military as well as vets. We have an FBI station and so on and so forth. Anyway, so how the pain point when I noticed with active military is budgeting, whether they're enlisted or active. It seems to be budgeting seems to be a pain, and then after they retire, it seems to be how are they going to actually, do they want to utilize their VA versus not utilizing their VA? Because a lot of them get the misnomer that they can use their VA with no doubt, but it would just be so much better if they didn't have, if they had less debt or whatever. What do you think is the best way to educate the originator, to educate the veteran or active military in that sense of utilizing the VA loan, whether it's, because we have differences in VA funding fees and so on and so forth. What would you say would be the better way to educate originators on how to get granular with their ideal client profile for that?
Well, there's a lot there that you asked.
Yes,
There's a lot there. So
I know.
I think what I would recommend again is do that self-reflection first and think about, is the veteran segment one of your say top three? Don't go too broad, right? So three segments, three customer segments. If that's going to be one of the areas that you want to focus on, then I think it's always easier to do it internally first. Find the processing level staff, the underwriting staff, and so forth that really have the expertise. Just make sure that you know the technical aspects first. Then I think you pair that up with some local community groups that work with vets, so that you're getting that. Again, it's real estate is local here. So do that local, find out some of the veteran groups there. You can go on and use like an ACP, American Corporate Partners. Again, that's who I've been working with through 2017. They have those programs as well where they can do the education. But those would be some of my first couple tips. And then from there, you're going to then create your positioning. You're going to create the messaging. You're going to create your content. You're going to start creating those tools that are going to support you in that process. Does that make sense?
It does. With certain independent mortgage bankers, they actually have, I think, VA specialists, right, to not only guide underwriters but also guide the company. Not every company has a VA specialist, and is that something that if someone's looking to make a maneuver from one to be a broker to a banker, and they want to say, hey, I want to specialize in VA. I mean, is that a question they should be asking?
Yeah. Especially if they're going to go down that path, definitely. And then find out again, this is where data comes in. A lot of these loan officers do have access, right, to MLS. You have title companies that can get you this data. Look at the transactions. Look what institutions or brokers, much less loan officers that are doing the most VA product, right, in that market. Definitely start there again, get some color. But then we know who some of the bigger veteran lenders, like I see New Day commercials all the time. I've used Veterans United for my VA loan, right? So very good on the digital, as well as they call you back. that was one of the things that impressed me. I won't name the other two lenders, but they are top 5, top 10 lenders. And the thing that differentiated Veterans United, why I went with them over 4 years ago, was that they did the best in both digital as well as calling back and walking, namely my wife, through some of the things that we had to provide. So that's a little plug for them. But hopefully that helped address your question there, Michael.
Absolutely.
I have a question, given your strong background in servicing too, because we try to do the full life cycle of the loan. And obviously what Sue talked about, the MBA is forecasting a 20% increase in business in 2024. So they're saying, the good news, that's great. And then the bad news, and this is according to Stratmore Group, a ton of servicing rights have been sold off. So it's going to be a lot harder to recapture that refinance business. Is that more of an ownership problem? Like the loan officer should still be able to work with them? And then I guess a follow-up question would be, with the items that, or with the great advice that Sue's talking about and the resources like MyFICO, maybe you don't need the servicing right to stay connected. Maybe it's on you. Can you just talk about and maybe educate our listeners too, a little bit about what that means, servicing rights being sold off or not, and what you would recommend from a sales perspective regarding that, wherever you want to go with that?
Yeah, well, let's start again. I love the local level because we know that it starts there. So I think, again, it really begs the question, are you a transactor or are you truly this trusted advisor? So if you are staying engaged through digital means, emails, and maybe even once a year you drop off a thank you present, a little note, right, to your buyers, if it was a purchase or even if it was a refi type situation, maybe somebody that's continuing to bring you back new business or referrals. I think that, yeah, it definitely helps if, again, you're educating them that, hey, look, no need to find a different company, currently being serviced by Y. Here's some loan programs that we have and we can do. So I think at the local level, definitely there's a lot more control there. I think at the institutional level, when it comes to MSRs, it's interesting you brought that up. I do have a client that I'm working with called Ardley, and you can find them online via LinkedIn. And what they do is they really work with servicers and lenders, take the available data they currently have, and then they're bouncing that against your daily rate sheets and loan programs. They're also pulling in MLS data on a almost real live basis. And they're basically coming up with segmentation so that you can really identify proactively where your risks are, but then also do it in a way that you're giving them a specific, here's the best option, second option, third option. You're giving specifics as to what the program's costs are, the rate, all those good details that definitely help accelerate getting a loan closed. So, that's basically, I think, bringing that outside of Ardley. I think, again, many of these institutions have the teams internally that they do that type of data mining, and especially in today's market, right? They're providing that list and they're trying to do marketing events and so forth to keep those borrowers in that direct company, or at least an affiliated relationship maybe that they have with a sub-servicer or two. So hopefully I answered your question with that.
Yeah, no, that I think helps people understand, just because someone's not servicing your loan doesn't mean they're still not connected to you. There's some financial pieces behind when it's good to service. I believe Matt Ishbia bought the entire Phoenix Suns off of loaning against those mortgage servicing rights, right? Or 50% of them.
Yeah. Here's the way I would summarize kind of some of these key topics we just talked about. And I think, again, I said, plan your ICP, right? Like, get a piece of paper, even if you're a top producer. I think a lot of this mentality that I see in sales, whether it's B2B or B2C, is you really have to take a CEO mindset. It's your customer. How do you want them to feel? You're not going to back out. Hopefully, you're not going to back out. It takes a lot of energy to get clients. So why would you want to just hand it off and then back out and move on to the next? Even if the market was great and you were flooded with leads, which is not the reality that many even top producers find themselves in. So I think you have to take a CEO mindset here. You own it, it's your business. And that means that it's hard work, right? If you're going to want to be in that upper echelon, and you want to make multi-million dollars a year, you want to have customers that come back to you 4 or 5 times in say a 20-year period, you got to have the passion and the work ethic, because this stuff is not easy. So, do some planning and then iterate it. I'd like to close with like some key takeaways. And so there was just 3 of them. Have a plan, use it, and then do the supporting actions around it, and then iterate. Because to think that you're going to do something once, and we all get into the beginning of the year, candidly, I would say every week is a chance to start over again. So, but you got to be broad. You can't just think about 1 or 2 aspects of your job. I think a CEO has many different things, right? HR, IT, ops, customer, investor, stakeholder. You think about it, right? That's really the life we live in sales.
To execute what you're doing, which is going from really sales funnel marketing, right? Where you're calling or messaging and trying to get a demo and discovery call. We're moving into a world of account-based sales, which is come up with your ideal customer profile and begin to offer a lead magnet. So you have some call to action at all times, something that provides value to them, that they have to at least give an email to you. And then you're seeing a lot. I think the reason LinkedIn is, in some ways it's the bots have come in, but there's a lot of great content on there because that's what's working, giving out free content and continuing to be there. And that only works if you are targeting an ICP. If you're just target blanket bombing, it's you're not getting the return on investment there. So I think that's where ultimately podcasts like this, we're always looking for guests. I think when you get in front of them, there's items like Teams and Slack that did not exist before. They're messaging internal. Have you seen this video? Have you heard this podcast? I also heard it. Maybe we should consider it. And I think we can do it at B2B, but business to consumer, it works as well, as long as you know who you're targeting. And the reason I say this is you can start over every week, but you need a succinct plan that's long-term, that's a journey map that draws out how you're really doing hybrid between digital and in-person. So, or just, I guess, all digital with the wine event. But like, if you can really get digital and in-person and trust the process, no better time to start now, not just because it's January, but because it's January in the mortgage industry where $3 trillion could be in the market at some point if rates drop down and blend enough. The business could be there in March, April, May, June, when people list their homes generally. There's going to be very few listings in January and February. So it's going to be, you can do 2 things. You can watch CNBC, and a lot of the people predict where 10-year is going to go and get excited for rate cuts and wait. Or you can have a plan of some of the actions that maybe don't bring the fruits right away, but will long-term in this account-based sales, because you're getting in front of them on LinkedIn. You're working on your lead magnets so that when that time comes, when the sun comes up, right, you have you can make the hay, because we're going into a world of a volatile 10-year, up and down, up and down. When that hits, you need to be able to capture as much as possible. So you really do need to plan around, not just having an ICP isn't going to work. You need to plan how you're going to touch them 7 or 8 times. And the good news is you don't need to do 11 cold calls to get 1 5-minute meeting to book one. The good news is you can get on things that are easier to do, fun things like podcasts, etc. I know we're going a minute over here. The bad news is, right? The bad news is you have to start planting the tulips, we call them, because the tulips rise in the spring. So please continue. We're going to be here along the way every Thursday, bringing you the people that you need. Just like Matt talked about, we're bringing subject matter experts in so that you can emulate and do the same thing as well. We're here to help you. If you're a listener and you want to do something in the real estate industry and you want to come on the show, or you want us to be on your show, We will. But as you can tell from my voice, as you can tell from where guests get me jazzed up, and I hope all of you listening here in the live studio audience come back next week with a question. We want you guys up on stage. No one wants to hear Mike and Mike talk the whole time. I mean, thankfully, Mike didn't get into the fact that he is a huge wine connoisseur, but loves to crush those grapes. But we are here to serve the mortgage industry, and we can only do it with the great audience, the great people up here. Michael, I know we go a little bit over here, but that's okay with me. For the audience here listening, I know we're going to do our mic drop.
Absolutely. One of the things I really want to take away from this is that I glean is not only is it get granular to know what it is that you want, but it's actually also important to know what it is that once you get granular, you definitely also know what you don't want to do, right? And so I think one of the key components of that is if you know what you want to do and you're focused on that, you're also knowing what you don't want to do. And that creates a tremendous amount of opportunity to collaborate within our own industry. We tend to get lecherous, or we tend to say, oh no, I can't, why would you refer business out to somebody else? Or why would you not want to do this? It's because I got granular, I got focused, and I'm concentrating on what I'm doing so that I can generate more revenue for myself, so that I can be the specialist, the trusted advisor in this field, whether it's with veterans or whether it's with another type of class. It's key that you know what you want to do so that you can get granular on the things that you don't want to do. And I think that's one of the keys on creating collaboration, because then the ones that you do collaborate with, right, they're getting granular, and then they're referring you, whether it's veterans or some other trade or some other demographic class. You know what you're concentrating on. They know what they're concentrating on. And it's so much easier when everybody is successful together. That's what's creating the team, right? Together, everybody achieves more. So if we can just concentrate on the riches and the niches, then we'll be able to generate that type of business and collaborate more instead of being so combative against each other within our own trade. And I think that's what we're looking to do within not only the More Talk Real Estate show, but within our own industry. How do we collaborate more? How do we generate more business? And how do we speak better with each other so that we can work with each other in our own trade? Yes.
And if you follow in the macro predictions, they're not like every other year, because 100,000 loan officers have left the industry this year. Yes, if you're listening, you didn't know that. 100,000 loan officers have left. And these were at the local banks, the local credit unions, the local, they took up the one or two of their family members. All of that is going to come to you at one time. And if you are prepared and they fit your ICP, it's going to be a lot of business. And I want to point out, people went through a lot of adversity. Myself, Michael, people in the industry went through a lot of adversity this year to get to where we are today, which is really the best opportunity for those here that have ever been here in the mortgage industry. But it is going to be a tough January and February. Ignore the noise. Work on your ICPs, but work on your journey mapping, the entire journey mapping, so that in March and April you can make hay. As the great Michigan Wolverine, Tom Brady said, thank you everybody for joining.